All right, welcome to Bet the Edge. I'm Jay Croucher here with Drew Dinsick, recording on a Monday afternoon. Today we're going to talk about the Seahawks and the Texans, and then we'll jump into more NBA chat by talking about the Sixth Man of the Year and Most Improved Player awards markets. But let's start off with your beloved Seahawks, Drew, who are top of the NFC West now. They are plus 170 to make the playoffs. Plus 260 to win the division, 25 to 1 to win the NFC. They are 3-point dogs home to the Buffalo Bills in this upcoming week. Do you think there is a best way to bet Seattle at the moment?
Yes, I think there are a couple of fun ways to play this team right now. And it is also fun that we're doing stock up on the Seahawks after a game where the box score was pretty deceiving. There was some fluky plays that broke in favor of Seattle that really helped that win against Atlanta feel a lot easier than it was. But I think the important takeaway from that game, and really this last week for Seattle, is that their defense is getting healthier, particularly their front seven. Now that they have some healthy bodies, particularly in the middle of their D line, they are more effective at stopping the run without committing more guys to the box, which allows Mike McDonald to do more of the type of misdirection and confusion he wants to do in the secondary. And I think that as they continue to get healthier on defense, and as they continue to get experience with Mike McDonald's system, this unit should get better and better and better into the close. This is a huge bellwether test for them this week against the Bills defense, the Bills offense. And I think that, the Bills offensive line has been one of the more impressive, consistent standout units across all of the NFL this year. And if they can win their 1v1s versus the Seattle D line, that's going to put some pressure on the Seattle secondary. However, with outside of Amari Cooper, there's no one really that spooks you in this Bills wide receiver room, or really their skill position room. So this is a really fun test. And I think, right now you're going to get probably an advantage, or you're going to show an edge to bet the Seahawks in this game if you have their defense above league average, and you're going to show advantage Bills if you have their defense below league average as far as currently rated. I am bullish on them in general to make a playoff spot in a very wide open, I think, wild card NFC playoff picture. The Seahawks obviously have a 1-game advantage now on the Niners, who do have the head-to-head win, but have only been able to compile 3 wins so far this season. And I would expect that as the Seahawks get healthier, both on the offensive line and on the defense, then they're going to be a much tougher test the next time they play the Niners, which is coming up pretty shortly. So Seattle's schedule in general remaining is a lot easier than San Francisco's, just in terms of opponent. And I think with the injury to Ayuk, the San Francisco's, just in general, their skill position group is starting to look a lot less scary. I haven't heard anything positive about when we'll see CMC back on the field, and if he'll be anywhere close to the guy that won Offensive Player of the Year last year. I think Seattle to win the NFC West is a play. And if you have a little bit more inclination just to play playoffs, yes, plus 170 as opposed to win the NFC West at plus 260, then that's fine. But I think ultimately this is a good spot for them to play a good game against a real difficult opponent against hosting the Bills this week. And if they get a win in this one, then all of a sudden these prices are going to flip to minus money.
Do you think the Seahawks have any ceiling to do things like win the NFC at 25 to 1?
I do. I think that their ability to go score for score with the likes of the Lions tells you that, this is a team that has enough firepower offensively that they could get it done if the situation breaks correctly. This is a team that I'm not as worried about being able to go on the road and get it done as well. They obviously have awesome home field advantage up in Seattle, and, an NFC West title would go a long way to, creating a path that's more reasonable for them, at least in terms of travel. But I would say that you probably need at least a top 3 seed. And I think realistically, you need a much healthier squad in December than you have currently? And the answer really probably comes down to the right side of the offensive line. I don't. They've been terrible this year, and the offense has been succeeding in spite of it. And I think that if they get better play than they're currently getting out of the right side, then I would say that that unlocks a lot of potential for this offense to just be a little bit more balanced and have a little bit more consistency, fewer negative chaotic plays. And I think it kind of starts with Abe Lucas being back and healthy, and I don't have a good read on whether that'll happen or whether he'll be able to play at the sort of the ceiling we saw at a younger portion of his career.
Yep, that makes sense. All right, let's move to the Texans, coming off a, tough loss to the Packers on the final second field goal. I'm not sure why the Texans threw the ball on third down at the end of the game, short of the sticks. If you're not going to go try and throw for a first down, then why don't you just run it and put yourself in a better position with the clock? But they are still in pole position in their division, the AFC South. They're minus 600 to win that. They're still minus 1,200 to make the playoffs, 14 to 1 to win the Super Bowl. Do you think the Texans are under any threat in the division?
Yeah, they have just fraud alert written all over them, and it is concerning that they are now going through their portion of the season dealing with injuries while they are also being tested with sincere competition here. And I think your setup there was perfect, which is there's a little bit of a lack of quality coaching decisions happening there, which is weird because I believe in the staff. I like just in general, these guys all should have the pedigree and the experience now, and they've shown enough development of some of these young players that we should believe in these guys. But when it comes to decision making in the game, like, forget about throwing short of the sticks, Jay. Why are you attacking the boundary? What? Like, that made zero sense, because even if you do get a completion, he's getting pushed out of bounds and it's stopping the clock. So yeah, it was a strange second half coaching from Jump Street, I thought, and poorly managed end of game by the head coach. And Bobby Slowick continues to have a bit of a sophomore slump this year, and it is trickling into CJ Stroud's performances to a degree. And I think that it takes two to tango, I guess, if they're really at risk of losing the AFC South, which means somebody has to step up and be better than they currently are. I believe in the coaching staff in Indy, but boy, oh boy, are they missing talent on both sides of the ball right now. And Anthony Richardson does not look like the guy. This looks like a totally lost development year for him, which means I think it's the Jaguars if there is a real threat in this division. And Jaguars went toe-to-toe with this Texas team once already this season, and if they get the better of them the next time they play, that definitely narrows the gap. But as long as this Texans back seven is as hurt as they are, and as long as Bobby Slowick continues to stub his toe in terms of sequencing and play calling, then I think there's definitely scope that they could lose their grasp on this division. And I know they're only a 1-game lead right now of the Colts, but I'm having a tough time seeing the Colts getting there. And they of course have the head-to-head win over the Colts. So I was actually definitely kicking the tires on some Jacksonville Jaguars prices today, now that they have sort of gotten through the portion of the season where the wheels really could have fallen off.
Yeah, I think if you're betting on the Colts at this point, you're hoping that Anthony Richardson gets hurt again, because Flacco, I think, is just a better quarterback than Richardson at the moment. Richardson completion percentage still under 50%. I think with Slowick, I think that he benefited immensely from CJ Stroud exceeding expectations last year. I think he's just been comically run heavy the past 2 seasons. Like yesterday, running the ball 33 times versus 21 pass attempts for Stroud. I get that he wants to lean on the run, and they don't have Nico Collins, but at the same time, just don't think this offense is particularly optimized unless Stroud is just a little bit overrated, which he might be, but still, I think that he should be throwing the ball more than 21 times in a game that was close all the way throughout. I think the Jags are the second best team in the division. at the moment, it's just difficult having banked 5 losses already. Serious uphill sledding for them. So I think the Colts are the second most likely team to win. But unless Anthony Richardson learns how to throw now this week, then it's probably still going to be the Texans. I make the Texans minus 415 fair to win the division, and so field plus 415, which seems about right. But yeah, the door is open for a little bit of weirdness, whether that's from Jacksonville or Indianapolis. Probably not going to be Tennessee at this point.
Do you have any appetite to say make playoffs no at plus 750? Because I have a very tough time seeing if they lose the South, like getting a wild card feels not likely.
No, it doesn't feel particularly likely. Just looking at the standings now, there is this cluster of teams who are, in the 3-4 win range. I mean, Denver is 4-3 and out of the playoffs at the moment. The Bengals are 3-4. Yeah, if they do lose the division, it's a pretty narrow gap to shoot to still make the playoffs. The way I have priced it, I have them still minus 800 to make the playoffs, which I guess is not so massive a difference from minus 415 to win the division. So it'd be very unlikely that they win, that they lose the division but still make the playoffs. Obviously that can happen, but given that most worlds where they lose the division, they probably just completely imploded. And I think a lot of those worlds too, Stroud has probably gotten hurt just because of how weak the rest of the division is. So I think they should be fine on that front. It's just, if you could even put a team like the Broncos in the division instead of what the Colts are at the moment and what the Jags record is at the moment, it might be a little bit more interesting, but I think they should be okay, even if they are somewhat uninspiring.
Okay, I think so. Real quick, to fall out, they're probably going to have to lose 8 games in total, and they've only lost 2 so far. So you're looking for 6 losses remaining on their schedules. The Chiefs and the Ravens were probably your 2 most likely losses. The Lions are right there as well, although that's in Houston. So 3 more losses coming from the likes of the Jets, the Cowboys, and then in division, presumably Jags and or Colts. It is a very, very narrow path to walk for them to get down to 9-8. So that makes sense that you're at minus 800 for them to make the playoffs.
Yeah, I think even at 9-8, they would be favored to make the playoffs. And there's obviously they can miss it at 9-8, but I think they would be favored. They'd probably have to have a losing record to miss the playoffs, which is obviously pretty unlikely. All right, let's jump to NBA Sixth Man of the Year, Malik Monk, who narrowly lost the vote last year by 2 sweet votes. He is the favorite at plus 600. The reigning champ, our Lord and Savior, Naz Reid, is plus 900. Jaime Jaquez Jr. is 10-1, which I don't really understand. Dante DiVincenzo, now of the Wolves, 14-1. Your man, Benedict Mathurin, the same price. And then Karis LeVert, Bobby Portis, Russell Westbrook, CJ McCollum, who's an interesting one we'll talk about. They are the next guys in line. Do you think there is a bet to be made in this market?
I wish I was writing bets in this market as a bookmaker because I think the entire top half of the board is completely lost. This is going to come from the clouds. There's going to be there is going to be a surprise here, I think, and the idea that any of these guys in the top 4 specifically are going to be able to go wire to wire, I think is hilarious and not likely. It is funny to me that there are 2 Timberwolves, and I guess your boy Naz Reid probably in line for 7th man of the year this year, as I would expect that DiVincenzo laps him in terms of kind of closing minutes and offensive output. But I think it's important to kind of reframe what 6th man of the year is historically, and that is it goes to a team that typically has a top 3-ish seed in their conference, and a player who is either filling it up volume wise in terms of scoring and just counting stats, and hopefully, presumably, it helps their case if they are part of the closing unit. And that is there's a very clear and obvious candidate that I see in terms of there's a player who's going to be coming off the bench. It could be for most, if not all of the season. And it is Grayson Allen. And I bet into this without having a very strong understanding of how serious his Achilles injury is. And every kind of nugget and note that I've gotten since I made the bets on Grayson Allen has been negative, and so I'm very nervous now that he's going to miss extended period of time and or just not be as effective. But he's kind of the archetype that I would look for, which is I think the Suns are good enough to get a top 3 seed, and I think he is good enough off the bench, particularly with his shooting efficiency, is good enough to be a guy that kind of leads in terms of counting stats. So I'm prepared to be disappointed here as I wait for information that Allen is going to be available, and he could ultimately end up back in the starting lineup, but it seems like there is still other long shots to take sincerely here, and I'm curious who you tend to gravitate to at current prices.
Who do you think is going to be the candidate for New Orleans?
Boy. Well, they just inked Trey Murphy to big boy money. So that would my assumption would be he's going to end up in the starting lineup. And so Herb Jones is probably off the bench, and his impact is so defensively centric that I don't know if he's going to end up getting the counting stats. What's your read?
So I think what is going to happen from everything that I've read through and listened to about the New Orleans situation, I think if you're betting this market, just having a feel and read for what the Pelicans are going to do is probably the way to start in Sixth Man of the Year, because like CJ McCollum, Trey Murphy, these are two of the highest profile guys who can potentially be off the bench. And so if you just look at the jigsaw piece of the Pelicans roster, DeJounte Murray has to start. Zion Williamson has to start. And I think Brandon Ingram has to start.
Yes.
So those three guys are inked in. I think Herb Jones kind of has to start as well, just because he's the only player who brings any defense. Willie Green has talked about how he is going to be the center on the team. So look, I don't think it's like 100% that he's the starter for the whole season, but I would price him as the clear fourth most likely guy to start. Okay. If we're pricing out that market. And so then your fifth option is basically one of three guys. It's CJ McCollum, Trey Murphy, or probably Daniel Tice if they want to play a traditional center. Now, what I think they're going to do to start the season, because Murphy has this hamstring injury that is going to keep him on the bench, I think from everything that has been reported, they're going to start CJ as the fifth guy, and they're going to go small with Zion at center, though they're calling Herb Jones the center. And so I think that is how they're going to start, and I think it's just not going to work. I just think that lineup is just so small, and there's this idea that DeJounte Murray is like a really good defensive player. DeJounte Murray is not a good defensive player. Like, he can't move laterally. He is not strong. And the steals machine that he was in San Antonio, like we're a few years removed from him being that guy. Maybe he gets back to it, but still, I don't think he is like a wing stopper or anything. Team is just super small. They're not going to be able to rebound. I don't think they're going to be good defensively. And so I think that there is going to be a shift that sends CJ to the bench for Trey Murphy, which makes a lot more sense if they want to be small, because Murphy actually has some length and is a lot more defensively competent than CJ. Or they start a center, whether that's Daniel Tice, Yves Missi, whoever it is. But I think that McCollum is going to end up off the bench. And if he does, then I think he instantly becomes the favorite in the market because he's CJ McCollum. So, I mean, what do you think about that? Do you think that just like CJ, because of who he is and his veteran status and everything around him, means that he just has to start and they figure the rest out?
First of all, phenomenal breakdown. You've obviously thought a lot about this, and I've just kind of look at it and see Messi, and I see Zion as a minus defense. I see Murray as a very minus defensive player, and that means you're going to absolutely need a lot of Herb Jones. You're going to absolutely need a lot of Trey Murphy, and CJ does feel a little bit like the odd man out, but it also feels like Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum might not finish the season on the Pelicans. Sure. So where he lands and what his role is in the next stop, all of those things are huge question marks in my head. And even if they do stick with this unit and figure out a rotation that tends to work, I'm still looking at a team that's like borderline play-in. This is like a 6, 7, 8 type of seed if things do work out, and it's like a 9, 10 type of seed if they don't. And so for those reasons, they kind of fall out of the it's the Malik Monk situation from last year. Like, I think Malik Monk suffered from the fact that the Kings were not clearly in the playoff picture.
Yep, definitely. I agree with that. And so we should briefly talk about Monk, given he is the favorite. I think Malik Monk can definitely win the award. I just think he's too short in the market right now because he was kind of barely at sixth man of the year type of thresholds with his stats last year. Off the top of my head, I think he was like 15 and 5. And he required a bit of a surge before he got hurt post All-Star break, I think, to get there. Like, now that DeRozan comes in and just takes up a lot of usage and there's no real usage going out for Monk, that makes it harder. But the main thing with Monk is I just don't think he's going to close games each night. And if he's not going to close games, then I worry about just the overall minutes and his counting stats, which he's going to rely on. Because, like, are you really going to close with De'Aaron Fox, Malik Monk, Keegan Murray, DeMar DeRozan, Domantas Sabonis? Like, how is that team getting any stops whatsoever? It just seems like Keon Ellis makes a lot more sense as somewhat. Like, is Malik Monk going to be like the primary perimeter stopper? Like, it just doesn't. I don't think that's going to be the lineup. And if it's not, then how is Malik Monk getting, north of 25, 26 minutes? Now, there can always be injuries, and that could thrust him into a more prominent role. He will certainly be campaigning for the award, and he will want it. And he is, I think, one of the key things for this award is you want guys who are very stable in their role and who don't make spot starts. And that's why there's been a lot of momentum behind Miles McBride in this market, which I understand because he's going to play a ton of minutes. But anytime any of Brunson, Anunoby, Mikhail, or Hart, anytime any of them misses a game, like, McBride is going to start, and he's just going to start a ton. And I don't think he's going to close most nights either when he is off the bench. So I think there's just a narrow gap to shoot. Certainly wouldn't put a line by McBride. And I like him more than other guys in his price range, but that makes his battle uphill. One guy, and we talked about him a bit yesterday, Benedict Mathurin, Drew, is 14-1. He does have a pretty stable role. He averaged 14.5 points per game last season on decent enough efficiency, basically the same efficiency off the top of my head that Malik Monk had. He's on what should be a high 40s, mid to high 40s win type of team, and he's going into year 3, so there's still skill upside, and he has the scope, I think, on given nights to close over one of Neesmith or Nemhard. So I think that he is a little bit too long at 14-1. I know we don't like Benedict Mathurin that much as a player, but didn't love Jamal Crawford as a winning player, and he's kind of the defining player for this award. So what do you think of Mathurin?
Yeah, I mean, it's a clean bet, because if he does well enough to be considered, then that means he's played a lot better than his resume to this point, which means that Indiana as a going concern is more likely to be a top 3 team. I think that there's clear scope for this to be dead money in the pool pretty early on if he can carries on at the current level that we're seeing from him, particularly defensively. He's such a minus defensively that he's kind of in cannot play territory. Like, if things get a little rocky for this team, that's one of the buttons I would expect Carlisle presses, which is just let's give him some time off. And I would kind of be concerned about that as a as a surprise way out of this market. But I think ultimately his growth and his development is going to be extremely important for Indiana reaching anywhere close to the highs they did last year, going to the Eastern Conference Finals. So if that step forward comes, which it has for many players who play that role, who have that role at his age, then you've got a nice little two-way bet there.
Indeed. Yeah. He would be my favorite bet in the market at the moment, and I would just be monitoring that New Orleans situation. All right. 2 storied franchises renewed their rivalry on Sunday night. Find out if Dak Prescott and the Cowboys can get back on track after their bye week when they face off against Brock Purdy and the 49ers. Coverage of the matchup starts at 7 p.m. Eastern on NBC and Peacock. As you all know by now, we've teamed up with BetMGM this season. We'll be using BetMGM lines to make all our picks, and we'll have special offers for our listeners each week. If you haven't signed up to BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE, and you'll get up to a $1,500 first bet offer on your first wager with BetMGM. Here's how it works.
Download the BetMGM app and sign up using bonus code BETEDGE. Deposit at least $10 and place your first wager on any game, and you'll receive up to $1,500 in bonus bets if your first bet loses. Just make sure you use bonus code BETEDGE when you sign up. See BetMGM.com for terms. 21 plus only. U.S. promotional offers not available in New York, Nevada, Ontario, or Puerto Rico. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Available in the U.S. Call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369 in New York. Call 1-800-NEXT-STEP in Arizona, 1-800-327-5050 in Massachusetts, 1-800-BETS-OFF in Iowa, 1-800-981-0023 in Puerto Rico. First bet offer for new customers only, subject to eligibility requirements. Rewards are non-withdrawable bonus bets that expire in 7 days in partnership with Kansas Crossing Casino and Hotel. Don't forget, if you haven't signed up for BetMGM yet, use bonus code BETEDGE and get your $1,500 first bet offer today.
Okay, let's close out with a few minutes on most improved player. Victor Wembanyama is the favorite at plus 725, which I think is absurd. Jalen Williams 10-1, Kuminga 14-1, Josh Giddey 14-1, Jalen Johnson 14-1. The way this market gets priced preseason is like, look at the guys who finished top 5 last year and then make them the favorites. I don't think is the best way to do it. But do you have a bet in this market?
I am notoriously a year early on MIP. 2 years ago, I was very, very sure that that Maxey was going to make the leap, and of course, he went almost wire to wire last year. So, this year does feel like people will catch up to how much of a huge step forward Jalen Williams took, and I guess I look at his usage potentially coming down with the way that team is now constructed, and wonder if that does hold him back in terms of just being able to make the counting stats show an improvement, because those are the two elements here. It can't just be first all-star game. It has to be first all-star game, and then also like meaningfully looking at the counting stats and showing improvement, meaningfully looking at any kind of advanced statistics and showing improvement. And I think Williams can do it. But I do think he's going to be a huge beneficiary of sort of the catch up, so to speak, of people realizing how good of a player he is and how important he is to, one of the top title contenders right now. So Williams, I think, would be my favorite. I disagree with, basically everybody else at the top of the board there, most notably Wemby at 7-1 feels insane to me. There is a tax, or not a tax, but there is a hesitance for voters to give it to a sophomore. There is a hesitance for voters to acknowledge a guy who we know to be a superstar. And I think Wemby checks both those boxes pretty obviously. And so people kind of giving him the Luka Doncic, this isn't a surprise, because there's an element of surprise in terms of a step forward that I think voters like to kind of capture when they award this particular, MIP. So I would look for a player who is going to be able to take a meaningful, young enough in their career, take a step forward, make their first all-star team, and maybe even, be the beneficiaries of having poor shooting last year, which is, again, a little bit less sticky. And the guy that sticks out to me at 35-1 is Franz Wagner. His advanced stats have always screamed he should be getting more usage for the Orlando Magic. I think the Orlando Magic have a really fun team overall that is well constructed to win regular season basketball. And I think Franz Wagner, if he is the beneficiary of shooting luck this year, his offensive contributions to the Magic are going to be, number one, felt very obviously, and number two, show up pretty obviously in the counting stats as improvement. So Wagner for me is the best bet on the board.
Yeah, I don't mind Franz. He is the type of player who has, become the archetype that wins this award. And he does, to your point, if he just makes one specific skill improvement, which is shooting the three better, then that can carry him to this award and elevate him from, I think he was 19 points per game. If he gets up to, 24, 25. And there are talks about, is Franz Wagner actually the best player on the Magic? Then that would be a MIP case. And I think that kind of touches on what is most important in this award that I think sometimes gets overlooked, is that you need to have a paradigm shift in the way that you are viewed, and it can't really just be linear improvement, which I do think hurts Jalen Williams in particular. Because Jalen Williams, even if he does get more usage without Giddy in the starting lineup, which was quietly a massive usage dent to J-Dub last year, even if he does and he goes from 19 and 4.5 to 24 and 5.5, he goes in terms of his perception from the distant second best player on the Thunder to the distant second best player on the Thunder, and probably not an all, maybe he's like fringe or third team all NBA. Like, I think he can definitely win, but it's pretty hard for him to create a surprise that you mentioned and create a paradigm shift in how he is viewed. So I think he has a higher bar to clear than most people would think. My one problem with Franz Wagner, going back to that, is that he was 0 of 7 from 3 in preseason across 3 games. Like, he needs to jack up the volume and he needs to start making them. Now he can do that. I don't think the shot is like super broken, but that would be the concern, is I kind of want to see him take 10 threes in a game and make 4 of them before I go all in on Franz. My best bet, same price as you, worst player, but that can kind of help in a way for this award. And he is, I think there's some 60 to 1 about on this guy. And it feels dirty to even say his name because of how bad he's been. But Jaden Ivey, who is at average 15 points per game last year, had an off season with Fred Vinson, the shot doctor, who the Pistons hired. He is shooting the ball. He shot the ball extremely well in preseason. He looks like a new player, and Pistons Twitter is ablaze about how good Jaden Ivey looked. And I think there are reasons to believe that that can be a real change, and it's not just being biased by a few preseason games, where if he has improved his shot a bit, he's being more empowered by JB Bickerstaff after being, kind of an afterthought for Monty Williams. They're no longer doing the playing Isaiah Stewart next to Jalen Duren in the starting lineup. Now they have real shooting. They have much more of a modern offensive environment for Ivy to operate in. Quietly, Ivy and Cade Cunningham are like the only 2 players on the Pistons that can really dribble. So I don't think Marcus Sasser is going to get that much run. What they did in preseason was Ivy would be the first man to go to the bench, and then he would be the backup point guard and basically run the second unit. So I think he's going to get a lot of usage without Cade on the floor. And this Pistons team, they won 14 games last year. They're plus 350 to make the play-in. I think there's a path for Ivy to go from 15 points per game into the low 20s, improve his efficiency, and be part of a feel-good Pistons team that has the biggest wins improvement in the NBA and is a, feel-good, play-in team. I think that is a path where he could win. He certainly has the surprise factor. The paradigm shift would be, Jaden Ivey, is he going to be on the Pistons in 12 months? To Jaden Ivey is the future building block of the team after Cade Cunningham. So for those reasons, I like Ivey at price.
Yeah, I love the Pistons. I'm projecting them to exceed their win total by more than any of the other bad teams. And any kind of bull case you want to make for a season-long bet on the Pistons, I think, is a good bet. I don't know that I see Ivy as good enough to kind of hit the threshold of first All-Star game appearance type of quality, and I still think that is a little bit treated as a prerequisite for this award for some reason. And so that would be the only I would lean into make the play in at plus 350 personally, just because I do think this Pistons team is going to surprise people.
Yeah, I think Ivy on that level would be, similar to Kobe White last year, where Kobe White was not an all-star, but was kind of like fringe, first kind of guy you cut off the list when you're making your long list for the all-star team. And Kobe White did nothing the final 6 weeks of the season, much to my chagrin, and lost to Tyrese Maxey by 2 votes. So I think that there is scope for someone like Ivy, who I think there is the thought that someone like Ivy is more in the spirit of the award as opposed to the linear improvement, of a Jalen Williams type of player who people already think is really good. So I think that will help Ivy. I think the big thing in this award is that even though guys like Morant and Maxey have won, they get left off ballot a lot more than the Jaden Ivey archetype, who kind of resonates across the board, as opposed to some people have issues with the fact that this guy was already too good. We already knew that Maxey and Morant were really good, because if you look back, it's kind of crazy that, Tyrese Maxey, Kobe White, given that White did nothing down the stretch and kind of tanked his numbers, that it was just a 2 vote gap in the end between between those guys, which I think is material as you look forward to pricing the market.
That checks out.
We are done for today. Don't forget to check out NBCsports.com for more information to help you with your wagers. Thanks to those watching on the NBC Sports YouTube channel. If you're listening to us in podcast form, don't forget to rate and subscribe. Also a reminder to find all your favorite NBC Sports shows on Amazon Music. Just head to amazon.com/NBC Sports. From myself and Drew, we'll see you soon.